let's also, as long as we're talking this morning, let's just talk about the myths of reading difficulties. You know, we used to think that if a child struggled with reading, even the word dyslexia, that simply means reading disorder. You know, you and I know that. And the underlying cause of that is not being able to perceive sounds in spoken words, and it's called weak phonological awareness skill. That's a medical research thing, we know that. But there's such myths out there in dyslexia, one being that you see the letters backwards. Or it has something to do with the visual in that respect. You know, visual could be other things, but and you don't see them backwards, okay? It's just that you can't perceive the sounds in the words.
Right.
Yeah.
Things get jumbled up, so it might appear that you're seeing it backwards.
Yeah.
You know, saying
You'll
saw
say,
for was.
Yeah, exactly. But you're not actually visibly seeing the word backwards.
Yeah.
Another thing, you know, we talked about this before too, that, you know, it's usually the little boys that are identified in school especially, and you know, you and I worked within that system. So, but really the research points that the girls and boys are
Equal,
right? They're not different, and we also know that 20% of students can be labeled or have dyslexia, and that just again means reading disorder. That's all that means. We also know that we know because of what we do that you can turn that around. You can fix the problem, and I know that we're kind of out of the box that way here.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that what sets us apart is that we want students to reach their potential and do what we can to correct what's going on to keep them from that.
Right.
And not going around it to learn something that might, you know, help them compensate, but to actually deal with
the problem.
Yep.
Right. Sure, I'll fix it, which is again different from what we do. And every child is different too. Some children may take longer, some children shorter time. But really the systems of the problem are the same across the board. So another myth too is that you just outgrow it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's interesting.
And you know, years ago, before we know what you know, that's what I thought too. I just thought, well, it's just developmental in nature and you will outgrow it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why teachers in schools want to wait and don't deal with it right away, is because, well, maybe they'll catch up and over time they might get it.
Right. And it isn't that they're not going to keep improving. You know, they will learn and they will keep reading, but they're always behind. They're never
at the same pace as what their peers.
Which is a problem. Yeah. Do you think of any other myths?
Well, I think some of it is if you read to your child when you're younger, that they will pick it up. And it's true, reading to your child is very important and it's very good for them. It's how they learn language and it's how you increase their knowledge base. But just simply reading to a child is not going to teach them how to read, and it's not going to take care of the dyslexia that they might have. Right. So I think that's a big myth that puts parents on the spot and makes them feel guilty if their child is struggling.
It's not their fault. And it's not the child's fault. And it's not the teacher's fault.
Right.
None of that.
Yeah. I think one thing that's hard for a lot of people, professionals, parents, teachers, whoever, to identify is whether or not a child is struggling with attention, or if it's a learning disability, or if it's a behavior problem.
You got to weed those out.
It's
and the
really,
only way you know that is through testing and evaluation to figure out what it is, and what it's not.
Yep.
Some of that.
And sometimes it's all of the above. But it's interesting to me, one of the most rewarding things is when I see changes in behavior and attention when they're learning starts to improve and they start to see changes in themselves, is that some of those other things come along right alongside of it.
Exactly.
And that's really empowering for the student to realize that they're starting to take control of all of those things.